friends, and welcome to another WSIB Truth Matters with Joe Machado. It is Thursday. It's a beautiful day. The sun is shining out there, and I love the springtime. I'm sure you do as well. Anyway, you're not watching to hear me talk about the weather. I know. I do want to apologize for not having posted this video on Tuesday as I had promised. And I know many of you have been waiting for it. Just had some other business matters that came up, and that caused me to push it forward a little bit. But anyway, as they say, better late than never. So, psychotraumatic disability entitlement. I talked about chronic pain disability on Monday. And over the years, it became apparent to me, and probably many others involved in this industry, that some may think that psychotraumatic disability and chronic pain disability are the same, and they're not. They're handled by entirely different policies, and the qualification criteria is different for both. So if you're under the impression that they're the same, it's not. And hopefully my discussion today will help to clear up some of that confusion and perhaps help some of you who may be suffering from psychotraumatic disability gain a better perspective, and then determine how you want to proceed with getting entitlement for it, or if you're going to a hearing, how to proceed in that regard. So basically, I'm going to be talking about issues that are very specific to the board's policy on psychotraumatic disability, and the operational policy manual document is 150402, and I'm going to post that on the screen here so that you can check on it if you'd like to. There are a number of elements that need to be considered by decision makers, so case managers, appeals officers, and the tribunal. I'm going to go over those elements. They're very important. They're very specific. In my opinion, it's not as confusing a policy as the chronic pain disability policy. I think it's more straightforward in many ways, but some people at the board don't see it that way because they keep making the same mistakes. And but one of the important factors in terms of, I call it more of a limiting factor, is that the elements that are considered under this chronic pain, this psychotraumatic disability policy, need to manifest themselves within a period of 5 years from the injury or the last surgical procedure. Anything beyond that point will not be considered in this policy. So if you're having issues that you believe are or would satisfy the criteria for psychotraumatic disability under the WSIB's policy, this one that I'm going to be talking about, if your issues became active, or your symptoms became active beyond 5 years from the date of accident or from the last surgical procedure, it won't be covered. So the most important elements in the policy that case managers need to pay attention to in the early aspects of the claim are whether the psychotraumatic disability is derived from an organic brain syndrome. And so the elements that they would consider there is if you had a traumatic head injury, if you had exposure to toxic chemicals, including gases, if hypoxic conditions were present. This is normally seen under COPD, so chronic obstructive lung or pulmonary disease cases, and conditions that are related to decompression sickness. And that's categorized in the WSIB's list for occupational diseases, which is adjudicated the Occupational Disease and Survivor Benefits Program. Caisson's disease is one that the board looks at as having or meeting the criteria for psychotraumatic disability. Also, there are three more. One of them is if there is an emotional reaction to the accident or injury, and if it's an indirect result of the accident or injury. So it wasn't something that happened as a result of the accident or injury, but developed as an indirect result of that. And I have a tribunal decision that actually speaks to that very well, that I'm going to read to you some of the elements of the decision, so you get a better understanding of what that actually means. The decision, and I'm going to post the decision number on the link below. It's WSIAT decision number 68798. And this is where the worker suffered a slip and fall, striking her head, injuring her low back and left ankle. The appeals resolution officer denied entitlement for psychotraumatic disability. This is despite medical evidence that indicated that she was experiencing severe anxiety and depression secondary to the chronic pain and subsequent losses following the accident. And then the board and the ARO denied entitlement based on a report from their doctor, one of their own doctors, that stated that the accident was not psychotraumatic. And when I was reading that, I'm like, well, yeah, I'm not surprised, because this happens. Somebody making an opinion on something that has absolutely nothing to do with the subject matter. I'm glad the vice chair actually pointed it out, because the vice chair for the tribunal handling that case, he states that the board policy does not contain a requirement that the triggering injury be psychotraumatic in nature, which it doesn't. It doesn't have to be labeled a psychotraumatic injury. In fact, nothing in the policy makes any reference to that. Only that there was an emotional reaction to the accident or injury, not that it was psychotraumatic in nature. So the vice chair goes on to state that he also noted the board doctor did not explain what aspects of the worker's disability were not psychotraumatic. Virtually all the worker's doctors have found the worker was suffering from significant psychiatric disability as a reaction to her compensable injury. And board policy allows entitlement for psychotraumatic disability. It's a condition where the disability is the indirect result of physical injury in the form of an emotional reaction to the injury, which is precisely what her doctors were saying, that her depressive symptoms and condition was as a result of emotional reaction to the injury. That's why I keep saying the board has no business being in the business of medical recommendations or treatment or anything of that nature. They have no business being in there. They need to get rid of all their doctors and medical professionals and rely on the medical professionals that exist in Ontario, in all of our communities, that are governed by the College of Physicians and Surgeons, which holds all of the medical professionals to a high standard, We don't need the WSIB doing that. I know I'm going off track here, but it pisses me off when you have a WSIB doctor making a statement which has nothing to do with the policy. Then you have an appeals resolution officer, the last level of appeal with the board, which can take 6 months or more to get there. That means that the worker is waiting to go for this hearing to have another schmuck make a decision based on information that has nothing to do with the board policy or legislation. So in my opinion, the appeals branch, it needs to be gone as well. Finished. They need to get rid of it. Doctors and appeals officers, be done with them, because they are of no use to serving injured workers in a non-conflict manner, in a manner that is not in placing individuals in more hardship and financial situation than they need to be. The Workplace Safety and Insurance Appeals Tribunal is sufficient, because you know what? At the tribunal, they take the time. They're lawyers. They take the time to read the policies, understand the policies, interpret the policies to the meaning of the law and what they actually state and not what they think they should state. And when you have an appeals officer and a board doctor talking about shit that they have no clue what they're talking about, they're using the wrong policy. It's like me wanting to get to Toronto, and I got on the highway. I'm in Cambridge. I get on the highway and I head towards London. Am I ever going to get to Toronto? No, never. I'm going in the wrong direction. That premise itself will keep me from ever getting to Toronto. You get the point. Or I hope you do. If you don't, there's more. Another factor that decision makers need to look at is that the disability, the psychotraumatic disability, is an indirect result of physical injury and severe physical disability or impairment. So, there's a WSIAT decision that I have here to talk about that one. I'm going to post the number on the screen. It's WSIAT decision 95417. And this deals with a worker, 31 years of age, working as an apprentice in an elevator, and the cable weighing approximately 15 pounds fell 100 feet, and that cable struck the worker in the head, cracked the safety, the hard hat, and the worker ended up having lacerations to his scalp, requiring sutures. The tribunal, the board denied psychotraumatic disability for this person. The worker developed severe depression. The tribunal determined that the severe physical disability or impairment, that is one of the elements that they look for under the psychotraumatic disability, resulted from the severe depression as a result of his injury, a significant injury, where an elevator cable hit him in the head. They denied benefits. The tribunal looked at it and said, no, can't do this. And they allowed benefits. So you'll be able to look up these decisions and read them in more detail if you'd like. There's many. And so the third element they look for is that a reaction to the treatment process is an indirect result from the physical injury. So in this case, the decision, I'm going to post there on the screen. It's a WSIAT decision, 77602. And the reason why I always reference WSIAT decisions is whenever the board denies something, I never take their word for it, or that they even know what the fuck they're doing. I never do. So I always go to the tribunal and I look for decisions. I look for the circumstances. and weigh them. Sometimes the decisions aren't always favorable, and if they're not, I point them out. But this is another one, which it's obvious. So in this case, so a reaction to the treatment process. So this person had an injury, was being treated, and as a result, a reaction to that treatment developed psychotraumatic disability. So in this case, it's a woman who slipped and fell and injured her ankle. And she needed to have multiple x-rays during the process of identifying the issue and then treating and then finding out if it was being healed properly and so on. And she was pregnant. So she decided to have an abortion. She felt that the x-rays had exposed the fetus to harmful situation, and that the fetus would have problems, and she decided to have an abortion. And following that, she developed depression as a result of that. And again, the board denied psychotraumatic disability. You can review the decision. It's asinine how they do that. Just mind-boggling how they do that. They either can't read English properly or just don't have a clue. But anyway, the panel found that her psychotraumatic disability, her depression, resulted from, it was indirectly related to the injury. I mean, she had an injury, she broke her ankle. I mean, that in and of itself generally wouldn't cause that sort of a reaction, but it was the treatment process that caused that. And that caused her to make a decision to terminate the pregnancy. And so the tribunal reversed the ARO's decision, and they found that there was a direct link between the abortion and the treatment process that arose directly from the ankle injury. The worker's personal decision was an important and significant factor, but the original accident and treatment were also significant contributing factors, which caused her to make that decision. And the personal decision did not constitute an intervening cause that broke the chain of causation. So in other words, there wasn't something in the intermediary that could have caused that. She made her decision to have an abortion as a result of her fear that the testing, the x-rays were going to, or had harmed the fetus. It's not a complicated policy if you read it properly. Idiots complicate it, in my humble opinion. So what's the lesson here? Never trust the board, period. Because if they're cutting you off or denying you benefits, there's generally some stupid ass shit, like my kids say, reason for doing so, which is them not following their own policies and legislation. So that concludes this phase of my series. So we talked about chronic pain disability on Monday. Today, psychotraumatic disability. Next week, I'm going to talk about mental stress as covered by the WSIB. And again, that in itself is also a separate policy. That may have some similarities with chronic pain or psychotraumatic disability, but are covered in an entirely different policy, traumatic mental stress. So I'm going to cover this next week. I'm not sure the day yet, but have a look out for my shorts. I normally provide a peek of what's to come, or I do send out a message via my Facebook page to the groups that I follow, or follow WSIBsettlements.com, where I provide information as to what's coming up next. But that's a very important policy as well that I want to cover, that I think is something that a lot of people are waiting to see. So tomorrow, May 19, we're going to talk about an issue, and I'm going to talk about an issue that is of heightened urgency, a very significant level of urgency. And that's an issue of the board's deeming practices, which is just out of control and has ruined thousands of injured workers' lives. The board has been using its deeming practice to decide cases, future economic loss award cases, loss of earnings cases under Bill 162, Bill 99. Thousands upon thousands of injured workers have been negatively impacted by this punitive practice, where the board uses their deeming practice to project or pull out of the hat, like I like to say, what somebody is going to be able to earn from some occupation in the future that may or may not exist, that the worker may or may not have the skills to perform, or may or may not have the ability to learn those skills to be competitive in a competitive job market. And so this deeming practice needs to stop. I know that many injured worker support groups, some political individuals and unions are up in arms about this policy and how to reverse it, how to deal with it, but it's not happening. And I doubt that the Ford government's going to want to do anything about it. And in order for a law to be changed, it needs to go through the House. It needs to be voted on, needs to be supported. And I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. So we need to take matters into our own hands. I mean, I'm an injured worker as well. I'm not affected by this policy personally because my claim is a pre-1990 claim. But when my company was active with over 10,000 clients, we handled thousands of these cases, some of them successfully, some of them not. But I know the devastating impact that this has had in injured workers in this province, in this country, where injured workers are in poverty and unable to care for their families and pay their bills because of this deeming practice. So the time is now to put it to an end. I have a plan as to how to do it and how to replace it. My plan is based on very basic, straightforward moves involving a broader participation from, yes, political parties, unions, injured workers, and more importantly, injured workers and their families and friends. Because you see, the deeming practices the board uses affects everybody, every single worker in this province. And what do I mean by that? You're probably thinking, well, I'm not an injured worker. That's not going to affect me. Yeah. And there's another person or a few other people or hundreds of people watching this video, and they're going, yeah, I was that guy at one point. I didn't think it was going to happen to me either. And it did. The shit hit the fan. I'm an injured worker, and I'm now being subjected to this bullshit deeming policy that has nothing to do with helping me to recover and get back to work, so I can feed my family and have a better quality of life and be a good, productive member of society. So if you're somebody who you don't think you're going to be that person, if this policy isn't reversed and you do find yourself in a position where you are that person, believe me, you don't want this policy to be used to adjudicate and map out your future and how much you're going to earn. You don't want that. I'm going to be working aggressively over the next few months, going around the province, doing seminars, talking to people face to face, like I did many years ago, because this is an urgent matter and it needs to be dealt with now. And if political parties aren't going to take on this initiative and make it happen, then it's up to us. And you know what? We are a far greater political party than the political parties. You know why? Because we have the largest contributing factor in this province to how and who gets to govern this province. And they only think of you in that way when it's time for your vote. Oh yeah, they'll be knocking on your door, asking to put a sign on your lawn and talk to your friends and go to the meet and greet and have this picture op and all that shit. But then once they're in power, where are they? They don't give a shit. Okay? And since this policy was implemented and they've been using it, every one of our 3 political parties has been in power long enough to have had the ability to make a change to it. None of them did. So what makes you think they're going to do it now? Not only that, they just gave $1.5 billion to employers after they eliminated a $12.5 billion unfunded liability on your backs because they didn't generate any more revenue from employers. Where do you think that money came from? Denying claims, denying you. And then to add insult to injury, let's give a $1.5 billion to the culprits, the employers, because they're the reason why you're injured. They don't give a shit. And as they say, if it's to be, it's up to me. So I'm taking the step. You can join me on doing that. I'm going to talk tomorrow about how you can join. I'm not asking you to go out and put up a sign or spend money, all kinds of money, go to events and other things. It's a very simple process that I've laid out. I'm going to talk about some of it tomorrow, and I'm going to lay out the rest as we go along. But it needs to happen. If you don't think that this is a source of a sense that this deserves a sense of urgency, a heightened sense of urgency, then you're not in that position yet where the shit hit the fan, but it will. So anyway, friends, that's what I'm going to talk about tomorrow. Next week, as I indicated earlier, we're going to talk about the traumatic mental stress. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. I can build this channel, and the more I build the channel, the more power we gain, and it doesn't cost you anything. It's free. It's free to subscribe. And please share my videos with others, because I know that there's somebody in your circle of influence that you don't even know is having issues with the WSIB claim, and they could use a lifeline. And if you have a story that you would like me to interview you for and air it on my YouTube channel, that'll be awesome, because you can offer hope to others who may be isolated, maybe they don't have a strong support system, and they can be inspired by hearing you and feel a sense of belonging, that they're not alone in this ship. Okay, friends, and thumbs up. If you like my content, give me a thumbs up. If there's something else you prefer that I'd like to talk to, or prefer no, if there's something else that you would like me to introduce into my videos, make a note of it in the comments below. or send me an email. I started talking on the chronic pain disability and the psychotraumatic disability at the request of viewers. So I have tons of topics to talk about. I've got over 30 years of experience with these people. But I'd rather talk about something that means something to our subscribers. Okay? So friends, as always, enjoy this beautiful Thursday afternoon, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.